Thank you so much to the subscribers that requested this video. It wouldn't be here without you asking for it, so I hope I did you justice. Here you go. So you need to make a model and you have no clue where to start. What if I told you that the first step is to do some shopping? Jokes aside, buying tools is actually serious business. In just a little bit, I'm going to go through the tools that I use, but most importantly, the ones that I don't use and why I wouldn't recommend them for beginners. Next, I'll introduce some materials and then we'll build the model step by step. And while I believe you'll be able to build a full formboard model by the end of this video, don't worry if it doesn't turn out as you expected. At the end, I'll share a few ways in which I've successfully used my failed models before. But anyways, to make you trust me a little bit more, it's time that I introduce myself. Hi, my name's Lola. I am an interior architecture graduate. Nowadays I work as an interior designer, but I totally credit my first class honors degree to my ability to make models and create spaces physically, which I loved and I learned so much along the way. And I'm really excited to share some of it with you today. The most basic is a cutting mat. Just get a self-healing one. They allow for smoother cuts and don't keep any dents. For cutting, craft knives are my best friends. I don't tend to use scalpels because you know what scalpels are used for? They're used for surgeries. They're used for very tiny details. They're really precise. They don't give you as much grip. And if you have loads of things to cut, your hand will be hurting by the end of the hour. Besides being incredibly annoying to change blade, I've personally witnessed someone flicking it across the room, which I also deem unsafe compared to craft knives, which you just break using the little lid or under your shoe. I think it's much safer, but I really like the grip and the stability that the craft knives provide. It also ends up being a little bit cheaper because you don't have to buy the blades separately. They usually come with a pack with 10 or so blade strips and you'll be good to go. A metal ruler is indispensable. Reason being, with a plastic ruler, the blade can cut into the material and go through to your finger. Obviously, be really careful, but a metal ruler will diminish that possibility. The best rulers are the ones with a zero right on the edge. You'll also need a T-ruler just for drawing, but just get it, you'll understand it later. You'll only need two types of glue, very likely. High Tack for paper-based materials, or UHU for more any other material basically. The only warning is that normal UHU melts foam, so if you're using it for foam, make sure it says in the label that it's suitable for it. Both of these will dry clear. The only difference is that UHU dries a little bit faster and a little bit flexible, which is always good for last minute adjustments. Well, if you know me, you know that card is my favorite material. Simply because you can clad any model made out of anything with card and get it looking amazing. Paper is just really versatile. You can curve it, you can texture it, you can fold it, you can get any sort of finish that you want onto it and make it look really realistic, and you can control the colors as well, which is a great plus. Now, although still in the same great family of papers, greyboard comes straight from hell. This stuff's life purpose is to blunt all blades as fast as possible. Every time I've ever used it, I got discouraged because it takes like 1,000 passes to get one cut through, and I don't want to discourage you, so I would say I recommend you trying it after you've got experience with the blades and then seeing it and checking it out for yourself. A much better alternative would be finboard. I don't know why it took me so long to find finboard. Why nobody talks about finboard. Why nobody at uni recommended finboard, because it was the best discovery of my life, possibly, after my boyfriend. It cuts like butter. It looks so pretty. It has a velvet sort of texture to it, and the beige is like an off-white. It's made out of wood pulp, which means that if you moisten it, if you like wrap it around a circular object, after it's dried, it will keep that shape, which is incredibly useful. So balsa wood is the first in our list of materials that comes in a wide variety of thicknesses, both from really thin until really thick. You can get rods and little batons made out of balsa wood. They're really easy to cut, generally easier to cut along the grain, and you can also curve it if it's against the grain as well. I recommend you go to an actual shop and choose them by hand so that you avoid this kind of high shade variation. time has come to talk about foam board. I think you've probably already heard about foam board and probably used it in craft models, but if you haven't, it's just a piece of foam sandwiched in 2 bits of paper. You heard that right, 2 pieces of paper, not plastic. Stay away from the plastic one. They usually come in 25 and 50 mil. There are sticker options as well, but the reason why it's so widely used for scale models is because those standard thicknesses are the perfect thickness for a scale wall. The 25 and 50 mil would work perfectly in a 1:50 model as a partition wall and the structural wall respectively, because it's already the right thickness. You don't have to double up the material or sandwich bits in between card to make the wall a little bit sturdier. And you might be asking yourself, but Lola, can't we do the same thing with cardboard or plywood, for example? Yes, you could, but cardboard, the corrugated insides will need to be covered up if you want a neat finish. And the plywood will only be able to be cut with a laser cutter, which will take time to prepare the file, etc. If you're in a rush, cutting things by hand is your best bet. And foam board is not only easy to cut, but it also gives you a neat finish if you know how to cut it, which is our next step. The trick here is to see foam board for what it really is. 2 pieces of card with a squidgy middle. Pretty much like a banana if you think about it. We're going to use a couple passes of a knife. The first one will cut through the peel, the second one will cut through the squidgy bit, and the third one aims to cut through the peel on the bottom. Besides those 3 steps, your knife should always be sharp. I usually aim to change the blade every half an hour or so of cutting, and holding your knife about a 30-degree angle from the mat will allow for the smoothest cut ever. The way I usually work that out is I just keep the handle of the knife as close to the material as possible while I'm cutting. Don't be surprised if you can't do it right away. It takes practice, but trust me, spending 15 to 20 minutes on this can make your model go from an iffy 3 to a solid 8 out of 10, I'd say. And dear friends, after you've got it right, I want you to give yourself a pat on the back because you're halfway there, if not more, actually. The base is to a model the same thing as the foundation is to a building. If it's flimsy, not only your model is gonna fall apart, but you're also missing a big chance to make your model look way more powerful. One of our tutors worked with model making and he would cast some plaster in the base to make the model feel heavier and therefore increase the perception of value. So everything starts with the base. And the first step to build one is to print out your floor plan. This is like the blueprint of your model. We're going to cut it, we're going to tear it, we're going to fold it, we're going to destroy it by the end of the model, so don't be too precious. You might have to tape 2 sheets together, that's perfectly fine. However, this is going to dictate the size of your base, so just keep in mind the standard sizes of the materials that you're going to buy, because I recommend your base to be a full solid piece. Phew, I spoke too much. Let's get this started. I usually start by tracing the floor plan onto the base plate, so that we can cut out a shape exactly the same size. But to be 100% honest with you, retrospectively, I would have made this base even bigger and a little bit taller. I just felt like the model could have done with a little bit more context around it. But for that, I'd have to have the context in the floor plan so that everything's cut to the right measurement. Now that we've got our base plate cut out, we just have to give it some legs, basically. And this is one of the most important parts of the video because it's a transferable skill you're gonna use throughout the whole model making process, which is cutting strips of material out. I took a leftover piece of the same length as my base, and now we'll make use of the T-ruler. So I usually mark the height of the base that I want in multiple strips. So if the height of the base is going to be 2 centimeters, I'll do 2, 4, 6, and 8. So that we have 4 strips for 4 sides. And then all you have to do is repeat on the other side so that you can then put your metal ruler across and cut the strips out in straight lines. So what I did is I just glued it down and then I went in and secured it with the tape so that I didn't have to keep holding it forever. Like I said, the base is going to be covered up later, so we don't have to be too precious with how it looks right now. I just repeated the same process on the other side and used what we had already built to measure the end pieces. After gluing everything together, I'm just attaching them again, not being too precious because I know this is going to be covered up, but we need this to be really sturdy. I don't know what material you're going to be using, but sometimes the models can become quite heavy, so you need this to be quite solid from the get-go. This is the part where you'd add any floor textures if you wish to do it by using your floor plan as your stencil, like so. This, my friends, is probably the longest part of any models. Cutting out walls. In this section, we're just cutting out more strips, the same way that we did to the base. But this time you'd mark your floor to ceiling height measurement instead. And ladies and gentlemen, there's no need to do work twice. We've already done the measuring work when we drew our floor plans, so now we just use it as a reference, and then use the T-ruler to cut it out. Well, almost. It's missing the window and the door, isn't it? So let's just rewind a little bit. Place the wall again on top of the floor plan and use it as a reference to mark where the window and the doors are. I'm doing a model in 1:100, so my door is going to be generally 2 centimeters high, and the window is going to be between 1 and 2 centimeters, which translates in real life to about the same true height of each element. After sort of just joining those lines, I gather my strength to be able to cut these little bits. They are a pain to cut. Don't worry, you are not alone. When you cut it on one side, on the other side, it will look disgusting. But you will just have to deal with it, and I promise it will look bad now, but once everything's put together, it will not look as obvious. Actually, maybe now is a good time for me to reveal a secret to you. You know when people say, trust the process? They only say that because they don't know about the Gestalt theory. Or they do, and they've been lying to you. I prefer to believe the first scenario. But essentially, Gestalt is a word in German that describes a theory that, according to Google, emphasizes that the whole of anything is greater than just the sum of its parts. This word is very widely used back in Brazil, my home country, especially in the design industry, to describe how during the process things might look a bit odd, but you just have to wait until it's finished and then it's going to look right. And also think about your favorite food. Mine is lasagna. It's more than just tomato sauce, pasta and cheese, you know, because the flavors sort of affect each other, and when it's done, it tastes completely different than just the sole ingredients. Basically, you shouldn't worry too much about the separate parts of the stage, because once they're put together, you'll see something completely different, something more harmonious. And I'm bringing this right now because those windows are not going to turn out as you want them to. I can promise you right now. But when someone's looking at your model when it's finished, I swear they're not going to be looking window by window trying to find imperfections. They're going to see the building as a whole. So I guess the aim of this step is to just get past it as soon as you can. Just one more thing for this step. You will need to consider the thickness of the wall that you've already cut. So make sure you keep testing and testing and testing it again on the floor plan to make sure that you've got the right measurement for these walls. And honestly, here I had a little tutorial on how to make curved walls, but I think it's just really straightforward if you watch the sort of time lapse. You just have to cut strips on the outer edge of the curve. I just thought this was getting too long and people won't watch if it's too long, so if you don't understand, please just comment below. I'll make another video just for you. But for now, I hope this will make sense and maybe it'll help some people out. At this point, we should have all our walls cut out, and I went ahead and glued mine in because I did not have any finishes to apply to the walls. But if you did, this is how you would do it, alright? Before gluing them together, you would take the side of the wall that you want to cover and place it flat on the surface that you're going to use as a finish. It can be a paper, it can be a fabric. But this way you trace the finish so that it fits your perfectly imperfect crooked windows. But now for the most important part of this chapter, let's get to gluing some things together. The first and most important rule is enough glue to stick, not enough glue to bleed out. So once you apply enough glue, I like to wave it for about 10 to 15 seconds. It will guarantee that when you stick something together, it will stick, and it will save a bit of drying time too. I like to go in and stick the walls first in sort of like little clusters, because we're going to be cutting the walls out of the floor plan in order to make a sort of stencil before we glue them to the base. But also it's really good to have that flexibility of having just the walls glued to themselves in case you need to make any adjustments before gluing everything down to the base. And whilst we wait for the glue to dry here, watch these cute parakeets flirting on the tree right in front of my house. I mean, someone's getting all the snacks. Look at her. Girls, watch and learn. And now that we've got this little cluster here, I'm gonna cut out the walls from the floor plan so that we have a little mask that will basically show us where to glue them onto the base. At this point, you could choose to just go ahead and apply the glue directly to the base through the mask, but I prefer to draw it on. If you do apply the glue, just remember to avoid your door holes. You don't want any glue showing under your doors. And if you draw it on, remember to do it very lightly so that it's easy to erase it after. And once I've done the first few walls, I then just start chopping up bits of the floor plan off and placing the walls where they belong. So this floor plan is going to end up completely tear down to pieces. Don't be scared to cut things out to make sure that you're gluing them on the right place. Here I cut the side out to be able to fit the external wall, but this is where the wall was. So that's where I'm going to be basically applying the wall to. Here I decided to demonstrate how it would work if I was to apply the glue directly to the base through the mask. So I just go in, apply, enough to glue, not enough to bleed. Then I'd remove the mask and place the wall right on top of the glue. If you placed it over the mask, there is a high chance the mask will not come out. But using this technique also means that sometimes the wall can slip and slide and sort of make the base dirty with glue, which I'm not really a fan of. But look, I still use it for all those walls that I like a little bit more fidgety, sort of like, those ones that sit between rooms. I don't know. I think it's quite easy to just cut all of them out of the floor plan, but it's up to you. Just use a technique that makes you feel more secure, that makes you feel more at ease. Right, so at this stage you're so close to the finishing line that you can smell victory. Or not, but we'll be talking about the failures in a second. So the last step we have is to just cover the base that we didn't really make that neat. So I usually just put some strips of white card. If you have a section model, you could use brown card to indicate for soil. You could even incorporate different types of soil. It can just be quite a fun exercise, but it will make the model look so much more polished than the base just being showing the foam board sides. Right, so I have a few things to say about this model. I didn't really like how it turned out. Reason being, it's very short and shallow due to the scale that I chose, right? This is 1:100 at the moment. Usually when we make models, we think about what we want to communicate, right? A model is to show a part of your building or a detail that you really like, or maybe it's a study model, in which case you're testing out these different ideas in order to compare them, right? But this one, I just prepared thinking I want to teach someone how to make this. And I didn't really think about how it would look when it was finished. And therefore I just sort of, I don't know, I feel like it just looks really shallow. And actually this was really perfect for what I was going to talk about now, which is when shit's hit the fan, what do you do? What do you do if you don't like the model that you spent hours creating? There's still multiple ways that you can use it. And we're going to go from least radical to most radical, which is using it without actually using it. But the first way, and what I ended up doing here, is distracting. So if something in your model is not like you wanted it to be, you distract by adding little blings, a little bit of furniture, a little bit of plants. It sort of just becomes a little bit more alive, a little bit more personable. Because this is foam board, I've even seen people attaching pins with like bright red thread for circulation. Like, where do you go if you are a member of staff? Where do you go if you were a visitor? Where do you go if you're a student? In a building that accommodates for all these different kinds of people, if you're smart with your colors, you could bring a lot of attention to one specific room and then distract from the parts that you didn't like this way. But essentially, don't touch the flaws, just distract people from them, and nobody's gonna see it. Honestly, just trust me on this one. Models are made to show an idea, but that does not mean that they have to be seen in person necessarily, right? If you're photographing it, there's multiple angles that you can catch the light in. There's ways that you can turn it to hide the bits that you don't like. There is photoshopping. You can easily edit those out in Photoshop, but also think about other things that you can do with images, for example. So I've worked before with taking photographs with different bits into the model and making a GIF. So it doesn't only have to be one little photo in your portfolio. You can do a study of the lighting on different times of the day, for example. If you place the model and the camera above it, you can take pictures and rotate it slightly up to 180 degrees to show how the sun would affect the windows and where the shadows will be. If we go one step further and you don't want to use a photo of it, you don't like it, you have still built your building, which means that you can still use the shadows. If you take a photo of it and you overlay it onto your floor plan on Photoshop, switch the blending mode to multiply or any other blending mode that you want, it will show the shadow under your floor plan, which gives a really interesting effect because it also adds a little bit of texture to the floor plan. If you're not really a fan of rendering it, sort of adds that depth that you really like to see visually. It looks good. And then if you really hate it but you still want to make use of it, there is a way that you can use models without using them, and that would be to photograph it and trace it to create a 3D sketch. I've used that before so that I could have really accurate perspectives. I am absolutely crap at drawing. I can be quite good at model making, but drawing is just not my thing. Like, it's my sister's thing. She paints. Actually, this is gonna be the only painting I'm ever going to make probably that's gonna look good. It's a paint by number. But back to the model. If you take a photo on eye level, obviously you're gonna have to get the camera really close into the model. Use that photo to just trace over and create loads of sketches with different options of everything, which can be quite fun too. And it's a really good use of the model that you've just built, because after all, again, you've built what you designed. Even if it is to say that you ended up not liking it and that now you're gonna change everything. I have gotten an extra 4 points before because of silly little additions I added to my portfolio at uni. Those could be little sketches, little drawings. Sometimes they can make a huge difference. And I think models is one of those things that it's never wasted, just add it somewhere. These are just some ways, there are more, but I'm gonna go now because I've spoken too much already. But if you do want to watch how I made the sub-level, there was sort of an underground level in my main project, and I thought I'd add it to try and bring some interest. And the furniture, I don't remember if I recorded the furniture, but anyways, if you're interested, just keep watching. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything that you didn't understand. I'm really happy to share anything else that you might need. So yeah, just let me know, okay? And I'll see you next time.